It's like deja vu. Like I feel like we just did this last week.
Did we?
Are we still in the green room?
No, we're out of we're out, well, we're I mean green room on some but not on the other. Hold on a second. I'm
Okay.
waiting for Instagram. Instagram is always the troublemaker.
That's what them boys told us that turned us on this platform.
I got banned this week. I can't do lives for 30 days. I appealed it and they doubled down. And I'm not and I can't and they took away all of my monetization.
You're live
No.
right now. We won't tell anybody.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody. We got you in the back door, not even the green room. We got you in the back door.
Snuck into a live.
Nice.
We're going against AI. Watch out. Things are gonna get weird here.
All
So-
for sharing a Boyd's gun
Right.
stock post, like, come on.
Well, we are live here on the Outdoor Drive. We have Brandon Barlow, aka Brian.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
In this day and age, I'd rather be called Brian, probably.
Then Brandon. You think so?
Yeah, it's a tough time to be a Brandon.
Real tough time.
Well, Brandon stepped down, so we don't have to worry about him no more. He's gone and out of the picture.
He did.
He was removed, stepped down.
He's gone.
The other one stepped down, but only down one step. So that's about it.
The puppet is back in the box.
Did
Yeah.
he trip down the step or did he?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The one now that's running president, she went down one step, but that was we'll just leave that alone. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, I took down I had a big Trump banner. I took it down because I didn't know how you boys were. So.
Oh, I mean, we're American. So
Make everybody wait. Let's pause. I'm gonna put it back up. No, I'm just kidding.
Hell yeah.
It's probably a smart move.
Damn,
Well,
camera alerts are blowing me up right now.
I know, mine too, dude. It must be like, I don't know, because mine just went off the same exact time as soon as we hit record, which is a good thing.
It's because we don't get night pics on our cameras.
You don't get night pictures on your cameras?
I'm saying you and I. It sounds like you and I have our cameras in the right spots if they're going off right now and at midnight.
Yep, they're walking through. You need the daytime pictures. That's the most important pictures, the ones that make it happen. Well, Brandon, why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do?
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on. Brandon Barlow. I am in North Carolina. I have the page Whitetail 101 somewhere. It's backwards right here. Whitetail 101. I appreciate that. From North Carolina, I work for a utility. Actually, I manage a utility and by day. And I am the Carolina Reaper by night. I try to go out and catch as many fish and hunt as much as I can and spend as much time in the outdoors as I can. And I've been watching your guys' show and it's been great actually. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thanks for jumping on with us. I know, like, you jumped in on probably one of the craziest podcasts we have, but maybe we can make it number 2 for you.
It was my kind of party.
I think how the original message went was you messaged us and said, "Man, you guys really know how to party." I messaged you back and said, "Let me know when you want to party with us."
Yeah. You guys were having. It was a crazy episode. I won't talk about a previous episode, but it was funny, and and that's kind of how I feel like most of us meet. Yeah, I think that's how most of us meet in this industry. Is it'll be like some quirky, hilarious, or you stepping dog shit at a shootout or something, and it's just how you make a friend, and it's so it's been great, yeah.
So dive into like what exactly is Whitetail 101 because I'm honestly curious.
Yeah, so Whitetail 101 is a page I started. So it's been so let me give you my full history. So dating back to the early 2000s, I was just known as the Reaper. That Facebook I got like pegged that. It was an old nickname. That evolved I moved down to the Carolinas about 15 years ago. So that evolved into Carolina Reaper. That's who my handle was for the longest time, forever, until about 3 years ago, I would say 2.5, 3 years ago. I got on Instagram as Carolina Reaper, had one season of that. Really, I like put like a whole bunch of deer pictures and fish pictures and stuff up. And if you actually look at my 690 fishing page, you'll see some crazy fishing pictures, and I have like 12 followers. It's like ridiculous. So, so what I did after a year of that, I actually took a lot of my fishing stuff down, and like bear pictures, stuff like that. I took all that stuff down, and I kind of sat in purgatory for a few months, and I wasn't sure what to do. And I found myself off of social media. What I like to do is I like to teach people how to hunt. I like to instruct, and I used to teach. I used to do the hunter safety courses and coach little league and stuff like that. So I really enjoy that. So I said, I'll start this. I'll start giving some pointers on basic deer hunting skills. At the time, I had a family member who didn't know anything about it, and I was helping her. And I was like, talking about the wind and hygiene and just different types of gear and shooting and proficiency with a weapon and stuff like that. Giving her the whole rigmarole, and that led me to talking to other people, and people were like, dude, like, you got to do more of this, so that led to Whitetail 101, which now is 2 years in the making. And my main goal is to teach people the fundamentals of deer hunting. So I pride myself on being very efficient in the woods. Last year I was very blessed to harvest 9 deer. I did that in 12 sits, and while none of them were 200s, you'll never hear me walking around saying I killed 200s. I don't. There were 9 very great animals, and it's not hard to harvest deer. It's not. And so what I have found is, through helping people, I have helped people who have hunted their entire lives and quit, and they were like, man, I sit out there and I don't see anything. And I help them with just minimal things, and they go and they shoot a doe with 30-06, and they're like, oh my god, like, where was that my whole life? And so that is what I want to do. I want to take those people that quit hunting, and I want to put them on a doe with the gun, first, and then maybe a doe with the crossbow, and then a doe with the compound, and then black powder, and then all of a sudden they're shooting bucks, and they try to get them back into it. That's what Whitetail 101's about, is to teach the fundamentals, but also some advanced stuff along the way. I've been collecting data on whitetails for a very long time with a lot of cameras for a lot of years, and I'm trying to take some of the findings that I have and share them with people with respect to one thing I've been pushing now. If this is my 9th season, pushing breeding dates and fawning. That's one thing that my findings led me to, and I know you guys want to talk about that a little bit, as well as just general whitetail tactics, scrapes. I use a lot of scrapes, things like that. Sorry to go long-winded on you.
No. Keep going. It's your podcast, man. We're just driving. That's it. Just because I'm super interested, and I think it's something that we talk about a ton, is like bringing it back to the basics, because guys like us, all of us here in the non-green room, we actually sorry, it's kind of a beginning joke. I apologize with it. I said, we were talking before, and I said, oh yeah, in the green room, and Steve's like, stop being official, you actually suck, like you're
This is Joe Rogan. Green room.
So we were talking before, like we talk about it all the time, that bringing it back to the basics, we've all had that experience from when we were kids, and we learned through being out there and doing it a lot. And then people will get into the sport and they don't really know what to do because they never had somebody guide them through all of the trials and tribulations. They're 35 years old and they're going into the woods and trying to tell the difference between doe shit and buck shit, or where to find a scrape, or what does a scrape actually do and the purpose of it. Don't you know that if you see a buck on a scrape, that the rut has started? Like, they don't understand the whole aspect of like what it actually is. So I think what you're doing is a great thing. It really honestly is, for somebody to learn.
I appreciate that. And to add to that, I think that even with just basic, just entry level stuff. So not even how to hunt, but I think some people struggle with like getting into like gear, and they think they need to, and no offense to any type of camo anybody wears, but they think they have to go buy a $300 Sitka or Scentlock jacket or some super quality, First Light Merino to kill the deer, and you just don't. Now that stuff is nice. I love my First Light Merino, and I've got a Sitka vest, and you guys all know me. Like the guys that know me know I'm a huge Scentlock. I'm a Scentlock ambassador. I love my Scentlock. It's all you really see me killing, and I wear my merino fishing and all that stuff. And all that stuff is nice, but you don't need it. You don't have to have tethered one sticks to kill a buck. I killed for years with blue jeans of flannel on the ground. And so, and that's kind of how I was trying to start my family member was like, you get on the ground, you don't wear camo, and you start killing deer with a gun. And then you start adding stuff like mobile stands and camo, and you start adding those things in, and now you're killing big deer, So it's just got to take the fundamentals, the wind, bedding, feeding, and focus on daytime deer, and that's kind of, but the gear is a big one that stops a lot of people. They don't know what kind of bow to buy or arrows, and it's like you can literally glue your own nocks on. This is not rocket science. And they might not be target grade, but I can glue my own knock on blindfolded and damn shoot it into a basketball. I mean, people are just scared to try, and so that's what I'm trying to do.
It's so funny because we actually like preluded this entire conversation in the intro, not knowing we were going to go down this route. But I think what it is like even your name's perfect. Whitetail 101. And
right?
I think people skip it, right? Because the 101 stuff isn't sexy. It's not the cool kid stuff, right? And I think unfortunately everybody gravitates to that 301 stuff, and they want all the cool kid stuff and the sexy stuff and the advanced stuff. And it's like, bro, you'd be so much better off just taking 3 steps back and starting with the basics and building a good foundation of knowledge before you start worrying about.
Yeah, I agree. The problem is a lot of people aren't ready for that knowledge, and I say that as humble as I possibly can.
Right.
And I know you guys are killers, and I say that as humbly as I possibly can. I'm not the best hunter in the world. I'll tell you right now, if I don't have 15 bucks lined up by September 1st, day walkers to hunt, 15 day walkers to hunt, I will not kill 3 or 4 of them. I mean, I have a lot of tags. I need to kill 2 or 3 bucks every year minimum. And if I don't have a dozen day walking shooters going into the season, I will not get it done. I'm not the world's best hunter. So, I completely get that. But yeah, I think, focusing on the fundamentals is the most important. What I feel like I do bring to the table is some advanced knowledge. The problem is getting that across, delivering that because the way that I deer hunt is so unorthodox that I've listened to 2,100 podcasts, and not a single person hunts the way I do or talks about historical data the way I do. And so it's an unorthodox way to hunt. It's new to people, and so it's a matter of getting people to see the process from the ground up, and why I hunt the way I do, why I focus on breeding dates and historical data, versus like my friends from the Midwest and Wisconsin and out that way. When I try to just throw them waist deep into like breeding dates, they're like, the rut happens in November, you're crazy. And they just don't want to hear it, right? Like, so because, and I get that I'm from the Adirondacks originally, and like our breeding wasn't a tight window. And in those areas, of course, right? Like an early doe is a unicorn, but everywhere else in the world it's not, and that's actually an efficient way to hunt. And so it's just a process of getting it out and getting it delivered correctly, because the last thing I want is for people out there hunting over historical data, but they're just putting like lure all over a rope, and they're like, this is historical data, I lured in this deer and I'm going to call it historical data. And it's like, that's pretty dirty data. Are you sure he's going to come back if you don't squeeze that on there? Like, I'm not so sure. So like, it's hard to press things like hunting over historical data, because I think a lot of the practices we do, like adding lure and stuff, is counterintuitive to historical data. You cannot lure deer and call it historical data.
If you're looking at it like science, it's an added variable.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
You can lure deer and you can hunt historical data. You just can't do both.
Right.
If you put, because I've seen it
You gotta
happen. I
trust
put
the
buck
science.
fever on a rope. I put buck fever on a rope and got a buck that came across the cornfield. But he's not going to do that every,
Right.
he's not going to repeat that unless you repeat that. You know. So
What about your style besides the data, or is that what you're referring to? Like, explain what you do that's so unorthodox.
yeah, so for me, I'm actually I'm hunting for starters. I only hunt specific bucks. I should preface with that. I'm in the Carolinas, specifically Eastern Carolina, North Carolina. I hunt both South and North Carolina, and um, for one, this is land of the sand. Every farm doesn't have a 150. If you go out tonight, right now, you come to my house and we'll go out and we'll go ride the bean fields with the spotlights. And my county, you won't see a 150.
Right.
Over in Bonn, in that county, we do it every night. You won't see a 150. You have to ride around to find a big buck. And so I only hunt specific deer because of that. This isn't like PA or Ohio where you could get in a good terrain feature. I always say, like, if you're in a good state, you just have to hunt a good spot. If like in the Adirondacks, like when I sit at the base of a beaver dam for 10 days, I would see bucks cruising during the rut. That's not the way it is here. So for one, I'm forced to hunt specific bucks, which is extremely unorthodox. I almost only hunt specific bucks. I do kill other bucks. Like last year, I was hunting an 8 point and actually killed a better 10. That happens quite a bit. They're running together, especially I do most of my killing in September and October before the rut, so they're running together still, so that happens a lot. But hunting specific bucks, having to hunt specific bucks is extremely unorthodox. Most people aren't familiar with that or ever have a dire necessity to do that because you're hunting the only 150 in that town. There's that. There's also the fact that we don't have a rut. I mean, we have a rut. Guess I should be careful before the biologists all jump on me because they love to do that. But we have a rut, but it's a trickle rut, or I don't know what to call it, but it's like a trickle rut. It's basically, I have pictures, videos of standing estrus as early as September 6th and as late as February 20th. This year I had bucks with antlers into April. Um, with respect to that, I have fawns that drop between March 25th and August 15th. Very widespread fawn drop. So here I would say a third. Well, I won't say, I know for fact because I run 119 cameras and have for 12 seasons over 80 cameras. I will say with zero ambiguity that a third of my deer are impregnated before 11/1. About a third of them are impregnated during November. There's a little bit of a rut there. And then I'd say the other third, the last third, are impregnated like late December into January and February. Um, so very unorthodox in a sense that I'm hunting specific deer. There's no real rut. You have to get it done early. Unorthodox in a sense that I'm actually hunting specific dates on specific deer, and I'm not hunting deer generally until the second or third year I know that deer. So very strategic attacks. I have killed a mature buck on my first sit 3 years in a row, so I'm going for 4. Hopefully I don't jinx myself. But I have a buck. He's daylighting right now every day, early season. And if he keeps that up, he's dead.
His hold on real quick, Trip. So you just ran some numbers there, like you saying a
Yep.
third impregnated before
About a
November.
third.
Yeah.
Yep.
If if you were to ask just any Joe Schmo in your area that doesn't have the data that you have,
Yes.
generally speaking, when would Joe Schmo tell you like the peak rutting activity is, like the time? When's the prime
Yes.
time to be in the woods? Like that 3-4 day window.
So here it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to a biologist from the southeast, they're going to tell you the truth, which is the majority of our breeding activity happens in December. Actually, that's considered peak rut. December here, from mid Georgia to mid Virginia to the Blue Ridge. You know, that's a December rut. And that's what they're going to tell you. That's when the majority of the breeding happens in December. The majority of our fawning is happening, you know, with respect to that. But if you talk to the local boys, like my buddies, you know, they don't understand what the rut is. They think chasing and that type, you know, bucks start hitting scrapes, they start chasing, they start seeing buck rubs and paw beds and grunting, and they, oh man, the rut is on,
boys, it's on.
But they and sure, chasing and all that are rut phases, but that is not peak rut, right? Like we know that, like if you see chasing, you're about a month off. It's a build up to that, you know. So if you talk to the local boys, they'd tell you, you know, oh boy, October 20th, she's on. You start seeing buck rubs but you're still a month out. 11:20 now, yeah. If you're gonna hit the grunt call, I'd wait till 11:20. I don't think I'd do it on 10:20. Yeah, yeah. Or if you're gonna crack some horns together, maybe 12:5, 12:10. So there's an angle here too. So I hunt and live in a pressure, like a super pressure state. And I know a lot of guys say, oh, it's high pressure, like Pennsylvania and Michigan, and those guys have a lot of pressure. They do. They do. I know they do. But it's human pressure. And humans can only pose so much pressure, and we get a lot of human pressure here too. Like in South Carolina, I'm on the line, so I hunt both. I get 7 buck tags between the two. Excuse me. And that's kind of what led me to this, was having so many tags. I can't afford to take 5 or 10 sits on a tag. I don't get that many hunts. So if I get 7 buck tags, I have to get them done fairly fast. So that's led me to hunting historical data, hunting known animals. What I will say is in South Carolina, rifle season opens August 15th. Rifle season opens August 15th. And it runs until February. And those boys get 5 tags each. Buck tags, unlimited does on private. It's like 10 on public, unlimited on private, but 5 buck tags. Rifle comes in 815. That's insane pressure. Okay, it's only 400,000 hunters. They get 5 buck tags and they're filling their wives and their kids. I mean, they're tearing them up. In addition to that, and then I'm in North Carolina too here. And in addition to that, they're allowed to run dogs. So you get massive, massive dog packs. And I don't know if you've ever seen like what 30 black and tans do to 2,000 acres, but you will not see a red fox for 2 weeks. They come through and they smoke it out. And the deer cross highways and they cross rivers and they get away, but they come back. But, you know, if you're out there 10, 15 trying to hunt, you know, and then you get dogs, it's, you know, you might as well come back in 2-3 weeks, sure. But if they're smoking it out with dogs every 3-4 days, you're done. You're just done. You got to go somewhere else. And that kind of super pressure is not pressure people are used to. You know, that's not, you know, you're talking dogs, not people. It's, you know, people don't push a piece of land like dogs do.
Like when dogs do it, I've heard stories of like them bucks will run in like creek beds. They won't even touch the land. Like they're like super nervous, super crazy. Like
so it's true. And so you hear one of my sayings is that down here, as soon as the first, and I always say, I forget my language, but I always say, as soon as the first asshole shoots his gun in September, because you know there's always people that wait till September to sight their rifles in, and I'm always like, and I hear pow pow pow, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, why don't you just set an alarm clock for the deer, telling them it's deer season, you know? Like, so as soon as the first asshole shoots his gun in September, our bucks grow gills and they become aquatic. Yep, you will not see him with dry feet pretty much again until the rut. So I shoot these deer a lot in the marsh. Yeah. Once you smoke them out with dogs once, and the guys let their dogs go in like August. Like I got dogs on cameras right now. It's July. Oh, I accidentally let my dogs out. Okay, sure you did. Mm-hmm.
Pre-fishing.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. They're trying to flush summer deer out of these spots because these hunters understand what pressure does to deer. It's like air in an air mattress, right? If I push on this corner, all the air goes to that corner. So they drop their dogs in these spots to provide that pressure. And those deer, like the air in an air mattress, they go elsewhere. And that puts them onto those private properties. All they are simply doing with these dogs are smoking the public out for guys like me. They're providing air to the air mattress. You know, they're just putting their hand on it and pushing.
So you're hunting primarily like true public land? I know like hunt clubs and stuff like that are real popular down your way. Are you hunting any like club land or just straight public?
Straight public. I am 80 to 85% hunting on the Wahari National Forest. It's like, if you Google it, it was 49,000 acres, but they added another 4,000 acres this year that doesn't even have paint marks yet. So it's growing it could be closer to 60,000 acres now. I spend most of my time out there for one simple reason, which is I can get away from people and dogs. It's big enough that I can like boat in and I can just get away from people and dogs. I don't get either on my cameras, so that's really why I focus there a lot. It's really really big and really really remote. Um, Out of necessity, I don't go door knocking for fun. Out of necessity, hunting that public land out there, I have picked up a couple door knock pieces because kind of where one of my things I say is if you have a buck at night, it's not your buck. Well, that's true. And so if I get a night buck and I don't have another buck, I'll move my cameras to try to work that buck back until I can get him in the daylight. I will never hunt a deer that's not in the daylight. You will not see me trying to dream up a buck with my imagination. If he doesn't daywalk, I don't hunt there. So I'll move my camera to try to get that buck in the daylight. So let's say I get him at midnight. I move my camera 500 yards and I get him at 11 p.m. and then I get him at 9 p.m. and I get him at 7 p.m. and then finally I get him all day long and I found his daylight spot. Well, that could take a lot of land. And so even with 50,000 acres, believe it or not, with 50,000 acres, because of trying to work bucks backwards from like seeing them at night, has forced me to knock on doors. And So I have two door knock pieces out there, and actually on one of the door knock pieces is where I have 7 piebald deer, which is really crazy. But yeah.
Is there that many piebald deer down there?
I have that many piebald deer. Nobody else does. You won't see anybody else. I've got a pair of twins. I have not seen them yet this year. I saw them. No, I think I've seen them, but it was in March, and all they had was their nubs. But last year, I have the splatter and back patch. They're a pair of twin spike horns, and I got a lot of good mock scrape action and stuff from them. But this year they're 2-year-olds, and of course this is Carolina, so 2-year-olds, a 50-inch 6-point, right? It's not Kansas, but there'll be 2 this year, so I'm really curious to see like what they look like at 2. And I haven't seen them since I said like March when they just had little nubs. I've seen that they were together still, so looking forward to that. I don't know what they look like, but yeah, if they're, dude, it'll be hard to not shoot them because I know at 3 they're gonna disappear probably. Like likely at 3 they'll relocate, and so I have to cross that bridge this year. Do I want to shoot a piebald 2-year-old or not? I don't think I do, but
there's 2 of them, so you can save.
there is 2 of them. Exactly. I love your thing.
You
So
get a
you're like,
2-year-old and a 3-year-old.
look, me
That
and you are like synced up, right? I'm like, look.
I was thinking about it earlier. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you were like, this is North Carolina. We don't shoot 200 inchers.
Nah.
Well, in Connecticut, we shoot 200 inchers all the time. With 2 tags, you can easily shoot 200 inchers. No, that's not a
yeah, it's funny because one of the other guys you're talking about being on a podcast, and they hit me up and they said, hey, we're gonna do this like point system this year. We're gonna have a competition, and we're gonna get like, we'll do points based on kills and stuff. And I messaged him and he wanted me to be in it. I said, hell yeah, I'll be in it, man. I knocked down a lot of deer, man. Especially if there's a purse, like I'll pay my $20 to get in, and I messaged him and I go, wait, hold on. I said, as long as it's not based on body weight. Because I'm in the Carolinas, and for me, it'd take 3 deer to make 200 pounds,
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of shit from guys that like kind of like your way of thinking or your way of hunting? Like they'll give you crap about it, like historical data and this, that, and the other thing?
I don't. And I take that back. I do, actually. I do. So I'll get to that. So I don't mostly. And really the reason is because I'm not really out to prove anything to anybody. I'm just offering free information. And for what it's worth, the people in this industry that, and not to toot my own horn, I'm the most humble person you'll meet, but there are some people in this industry that actually mean something. People that I respect, that I think are good deer hunters and know the industry well, that follow me, and they breed that sense of confidence into the things that I'm saying and doing, and tell me to keep it up. That if for all of the naysayers over on Facebook, because that is a wild animal over there. I'll tell
That's
you
where
right
they
now.
all are too.
Where
I'll
they
post a picture
breed.
of a doe and they'll be like, "That's a goat," and I'm like, "Jesus Christ! All right, Facebook, I ain't even gonna try this, right?" So for all the naysayers over there, all it takes is for like one person, like a Mark Jury or something, to be like, "Hey, bud, like you're putting out the right info," and that makes it all worth it. So I'll tell you right now, I don't really have any regrets. I'm gonna keep hammering on the path I'm hammering on. I know that the data and the information I'm putting out is real. I mean, I see it. I can show it on paper and on camera. So I don't try to make wild accusations. If I say buck twins don't disperse until 3 while other deer disperse at 2, it's because that's what I'm seeing. It's not because I want to make that up. I mean, that's just what I'm seeing. I mean, I don't care if it's like Ripley's. You can believe it or not. I mean, but the reality is, I'm hoping to kind of just the past couple of years, I've tried to showcase that it's easy to harvest whitetails, and that's what the goal is. And so, in 2 years on Instagram, I've harvested 9 deer this year and 12 sits. Last year, 7 deer and 11 sits. So, I mean, I harvested whatever that is. I went to public school. 17 deer in 2 years. I mean, and I didn't hunt a whole lot. And well, none of them were 200s, but a couple of them were like 150s, and a couple of them were 3-year-olds. So, I mean, my point is I'm not the best hunter in the world, but harvesting deer is not hard. You just have to hunt deer where deer live. And if you want to hunt a deer, you need to hunt a deer where it lives in the daylight, a doe. If you want to hunt a 2-year-old, you need to hunt a 2-year-old where he lives in the daylight. And you go shoot the 2-year-old. It's easy when you think about it like that. So if you want to shoot a 5-year-old, yes, it's a needle in a haystack, but go find where a 5-year-old lives in the daylight. I have 49 mock scrapes, and I kill them if I get like too many night pictures. Like if it's a travel corridor, if there's a primary food source pops up. Maybe if a primary food source pops up like a white oak, I'll wait it out. But if I start getting night pictures, like destination food source type night pictures or travel corridor type night pictures, I will kill a scrape, um, because scrapes are an important commodity to me, and so is my money that pays for cameras. And
How
I
do
can't
you
afford to have a scrape out there getting night pictures. It's a waste of time.
how do you kill scrape?
I kill a scrape by generally, it depends on the scrape. So I move my vines around. I actually play musical vines. It's not something you'll hear anybody else that does. That's another unorthodox thing I do. I could write a book on all of the unorthodox things I do, but I move my vines around. I interchange them quite a bit. But how I kill a scrape depends on the scrape. So if it's a long-term community scrape, there's very little chance I'm killing it. I mean, maybe logging or flooding killed it for me. But a long-term community scrape, community meaning year round, and if I say the word scrape, that means daylight. I don't have scrapes at night that provide night pictures. So a community year round scrape daylight. If I kill one of those, generally speaking, it doesn't happen. I mean, it's either because I maybe lost a piece of door knock property and I will remove my evidence of my scrape, like I will take my vine down. And but now if you're talking about killing a scrape, like for example, I actively seek out other scrapes on a property, and I don't like other scrapes. I want to be the only scrape, especially going into the rut. So I will, at that point, cut vines down, and I will also drag brush to take, on top of the scrapes to block them. And I even do dig up the dirt. I have dirt in my freezer now, depending on the scrape. If it's an established scrape, I will take the dirt and freeze it. There's things you can do, little borax, some other things to semi-preserve it, and you can freeze it. But I'll take that scrape dirt and I'll take that vine and I'll relocate it maybe to a spot that works for me. So maybe the wind is swirling here because it's in the mouth of an oxbow and it's swirling, and that's why they have the scrape there to begin with. I might take the scrape and just move it to the edge of the oxbow so that I can paddle in and actually have my ass hanging over the creek while I can shoot an arrow into the scrape. And while the scrape maybe only moved 50 yards, they'll still use it. So when I say define kill the scrape, I mean I kill them and move them. I kill them inadvertently sometimes, like flooding, but mostly I'm killing a scrape. It's not community and it's not a daytime scrape. If I'm killing a scrape, it's because I went in there, I built one like this week, and for whatever reason, I have a vetting process for a scrape, a checklist, a vetting process to build a scrape before I build a scrape. But let's say for some reason I build a scrape and I didn't vet it right, or I miscalculated and I'm getting night pictures all over the place, then I will just go in and take my vine and take my camera, and it'll, it'll fizzle out on its own.
So
Because
you
it was only ever like a four corners deer trails to begin with. It wasn't anything that they did,
so
So
you so so are you familiar with Brian Kittlinger? No.
never heard of the
So
name.
Brian also.
Is his name Brian or Brandon?
No, his name's Brian.
Brandon Kitchinger.
No,
Yeah.
no. Brian Kittlinger. He owns Lift Outdoors, so he's a big scrape guy too.
Gotcha.
That's kind of where I had learned about the moving of the vine. So he would build
Oh,
an
yeah.
artificial vine, and he'll go to like Joann Fabrics or whatever crafting store, and he'll get like fake leaves and everything. And then right before the season like kicks off, like September, October, he'll go in and move the vine to another spot to then instill another herd of deer and rotate it through different properties, which is kind of pretty cool. And that seems like kind of like the same thing that you're doing.
So the reason that I move vines is for a very specific reason. It's actually to create priority at my scrape. And this is kind of, we talked about whitetail 101 and the basics, but if you want to know the truth, I mean the real bread and butter of my channel is in the higher level tactics that I do, the unorthodox stuff. And the reason I move scrapes is to create precedence and priority at my scrape. So, like, while I go in and kill other scrapes to make sure I'm the only show in town, it's also extremely important that, forgive me, guys, 1 second. Something's happening here.
You're good.
Give me 1 second.
Little word from our sponsors today.
A little word from the sponsors here. We got a fire.
Refuse to follow.
We got a fire.
Don't forget to check us out at Hunt Stock.
My bad. I actually had my solder iron on still, and I caught a piece of paper on fire. So I've been over here playing evil scientist. Forgive me. Train of thought. Scrape. So yeah. So basically, the reason I move my vines is to create priority at my scrape. So the way that a buck prioritizes a piece of property. Let's say, for example, to make the listeners easy to wrap their mind around this, you have 40 acres. And a big buck comes every year on Halloween, and you got 3 scrapes out there, and you never know which scrape he's going to hit, and it could be one or the other. And you don't really have any historical data because there's no telling how he's going to hit the scrapes and which ones he's going to hit. He might not even hit the one that you're trying to hunt, and it can create a big problem. And the way that bucks prioritize a piece of property, I have found, is via interdigital scent. So if the majority of the interdigital scent is congregated, let's say around an apple tree, as soon as that deer, if you can imagine a buck coming to your parcel with a blindfold on, he's using his nose to just see where everybody's at. So he's naturally going to end up at that apple tree where the majority, the concentration of that interdigital scent is. He's going to end up there first. So we're going to get the first picture of him. You're going to be like, oh shit, he's at the apple tree. He's going to come right in and go there because that's where the deer have been there, and they've been just dropping it and dropping it and dropping it and dropping it. And it's a concentration of interdigital scent. And that will be where the buck will prioritize his visit. I mean, he'll travel via the wind and stuff. Well, he will prioritize his visit based on a concentration of interdigital scent. So, and I don't mean like spraying it on your scrape. I mean like breadcrumbs leading to areas. He's following those breadcrumbs with his nose.
Wagon wheel, yeah.
So, if you've seen any of my videos where I move my vines, or they're on my channel for listeners, you go find them. I have a lot of videos where I've moved my vine, and I'll have a doe group come, multiple doe groups come, and they will stand in my scrape for days. Literally will not leave my scrape. I had a video last year where I thought a doe was going to starve to death in my scrape. She stayed there for 2 days and would not leave because of the unfamiliar scent of other deer. And that doe group and another doe group just obsessed. I had a solar panel on a lithium battery in the broad sun, like, 1,000 watts per meter squared, direct sunlight on the solar panel, and they killed my battery because they just stood in the scrape all day. And so, what I mean by that is, when you move vines around, as long as you do it carefully, like you don't want to leave boot scent and stuff around. You don't want to contaminate the area. But let's say you go out in the pouring rain, you take a vine, you swap them, and it's raining, so the deer are none the wiser, and you swap them and you get out of there before the rain stops. The deer come back and they obsess about that. The does will obsess about that. They will obsess and obsess and obsess and obsess and obsess. And if you do that right there around that September time frame, you are creating a concentration of breadcrumbs going to that scrape. And you can ensure that you're talking about historical data, and we're talking about scent, and adding scent isn't very good historical data. Well, it's not very good back to your 40 acres. It's not very good historical data either if the buck hits your scrape on the third day he's there. That doesn't do you any good. If he's there for 5 days and he hits your scrape on day 3, that doesn't do you any good. You're gonna hunt there 3 days late next year. You need that buck to hit your scrape on day 1, hour 1. And the most as stupid as it sounds, the most effective way I've been able to do that is by moving vines around. And I'll move those vines right before I hunt. And the does man, they they can't handle it. And it creates that concentration, it creates that breadcrumb. And I try to, and that is in essence how I've, I moved my vine last year and killed that 10 point on the first sit, and I actually passed the Magnolia buck, an 8 pointer I was hunting for 2 years. I passed him to kill the 10 on my first sit, and I did the vine trick there. And whether it had a lot of weight, carried a lot of weight in that or not, I don't know. But those deer killing my scrape, killing my battery in one day repeatedly. Um, that concentration of interdigital scent is why that buck was there. I mean, so that's why I do it. I don't know why your friend does it, but for me, it's for scrape priority. I just want interdigital scent just dumped at my scrape.
Two questions. Kenny
Hold on.
Mac. Yeah.
Oh, you okay.
Kenny Mac's got a question. What do you use for vine, natural or synthetic, and what are you using for scents, if any?
Yeah, so those are actually two awesome questions, and I want to preface by saying that ropes and fake stuff work, and scent really works great for luring deer. If you're just trying to lure deer, it really does. I mean, I've literally did a post one time, and I took it down because I got a lot of haters. But I took a bottle of Old Buck Fever and I poured it on a sidewalk, and at like 3 a.m. I had a doe rolling in it. I shit you not. So that stuff works. I mean, it's not what that I hunt off historical data, so I don't want to lure deer. I don't want that, so I'm trying to keep my data clean. But if you want to use ropes, and I got another buddy Dave who uses his ropes up in Long Island, and his damn goop and stuff, and he gets like these huge bucks all the time. So that stuff works. But for me, I only use natural vines. If I can't find a vine, I'll use like whatever the bucks rub with their antlers, like some jack pine or something, or cedar. But I prefer to use natural vine. And I like it if it's dripping into the scrape. I don't know what that does, but they really like that smell, the vine drip smell. So I'll use a regular vine, no scent. I'll dig the scrape back. One thing I don't show in a lot of videos, because I try to hold some stuff back for future videos. But
Wait,
I think I don't know how many people are aware, but there's actually a crust on top of the earth, and it's like a 6-inch crust. And you really need to break that crust with a shovel, and it lets the smell of the earth out. So I will take. I carry a. I have a garden hoe that broke off. So it's just a sharp ass neck. And I actually stick that in the ground and I work it. I use it as a walking stick. So you want to break that crust, and I will add my own scent. I'll pee in it. So my pee, the broken crust, the vine dripping into it, that's the only scent that the scrape gets. But you have to build it at a four corners where like two major deer trails intersect, so that the deer, a daytime four corners, so that the daytime deer bump their head on it when they're walking. As every time they come through that intersection, they'll bump their head on it. They'll bump their head on it, and it will eventually become like a sacred. You'll see deer from 50 yards. They're just staring at the vine. They just, I gotta get to that vine, man. I gotta get there. And but if you're luring deer with scent, you can build your scrape anywhere. You don't have to build it at a four corners. They'll come over to it. Um, but if you're not using scent, you have to build it at a place where the deer will bump their heads on it. I mean, otherwise they're not going to find your vine. I mean, you have to stick it in their face. So I'm looking for a four corners or a five corners where like trails come together. I'll hang my vine there so they damn hit their head on it every time they come through. I'll break the crust, and whatever, for whatever reason, breaking that crust, they'll start pissing and shitting in it, and they'll, because then what happens is the deer comes up and they smell the previous deer, and it just starts this like back and forth, like this doe smells that doe, and then they have their times they come through, and but if you can't find a four corners and you just want to build a scrape in the swamp, you can add scent to it. I mean, I know guys that lure deer all the time. It works. It's just I hunt historical data, so I'm trying not to lure deer or bait deer or anything. I'm trying to catch them naturally where they are.
What do you find? Do you have a pattern when it comes to like relation to food or bedding? Like as you're telling these stories, I'm assuming it sounds like you're closer to bedding than you are food, or are you just in the middle transition? But I mean, from my experience, I would think closer to bedding, you're obviously going to get, that's where they're going to burn that battery out, and you're going to get more likely to get the daytime activity. As you
Yep,
get farther from bedding, you're going to get more nighttime activity. What's your tactic
exactly right.
for that?
Yep, that's exactly right. And so if you watch a lot of my posts, what you'll see is that I'm always talking about like day walkers, day walkers, day walkers. I had a podcast recently where they asked me like how I categorize my data, and it is very, very extreme to hear in your ears when I say it. But I literally take my day pictures and my night pictures and I break them into two separate folders on my laptop. While I do like night bucks, they're like summer bucks. We all like to look at a summer buck, a velvet buck. We all like to look at a 180-inch deer at 2 a.m. I love it too. I love it. I do love it. And I like to look at it. And if I don't have a buck to hunt and I'm bored and I want to drink a beer, I can go to that night folder, maybe that summer folder, and I can pull up a night buck and be like, all right, I had this guy at midnight. Let's try to throw a couple cameras out there and work them backwards. You know what I mean? Right. But in the here and now, I got my bow in my hand. I don't give a shit about night bucks and summer bucks. They're in a separate folder. The here and now, I care about my day bucks. And you're not going to have day bucks if you're not focusing on bedding areas.
Mm.
Period. So I don't hunt food, travel corridors, and I don't even hunt near bedding areas. I hunt in bedding areas. I hunt inside bedding areas, and I only run bedding cameras and bedding scrapes. Like I said, if I have, no, I take that back. I have cameras that are not bedding cameras. I have parking lot cameras and things like that, but I only run bedding scrapes. And we're talking about killing a scrape. If I'm getting, I'd say less than 80% daytime pictures, I kill a scrape. It's just done. I don't want 50-50, half day, half night. I'm not close enough. I'm not inside the bedding area. My really, really good bedding spots, I will not get a deer all night long. Not a single deer. Not one. They'll come back 4:30. My bucks come back 4:30. They start coming back. The earliest bucks are coming back 3:50, 4:10, 4:30. A lot of my bucks, maybe 5. They're all back by 5:15, 5:20. And they stay there all day. So at night I get so I have this buck I'm gonna hunt in September. Old Man Earl, I called him, and he's that way. September 13th, he shows up. He's there 8, 10, noon, 1, 4. And then about 5:30 in the afternoon, he hits the scrape and he's gone all night. He doesn't come back. That is a pure bedding area. And that's where I hunt. I paddle in there in my canoe. I hunt on the bank of the creek inside the middle of a bedding area. The creek sucks my scent away. I don't contaminate it. I don't walk around in there. I have to take like 10 steps in to freshen the scrape or fix it or pull vines, whatever. But my tree is half in the water. I tie my canoe to the bottom of my tree, and my sticks are hanging over the water, and I climb up, and I don't walk around in there at all. But I only hunt and run cameras in bedding areas. So yeah, that's why I'm getting the daytime deer. I mean,
Are
you
you
know,
are you getting these day walker, like these target bucks, ones that you're actually, going after and hunting? How often are they hitting these scrapes in the daylight? Like every single day?
so it just depends. So no, because the bucks, what I find is the majority of the bucks. So let's say I find a buck and he's a 3-year-old and he shows up. I'm not going to hunt him this year. Or even a 4-year-old. Let's say he's a 140-inch 4-year-old. He shows up because I got a pair of twin 8-pointers last year, 140-inch 4-year-olds. I grew them from spikes. Never even hunted that scrape once since I built the scrape. I'm going to hunt it this year for the first time. I'm expecting them both in October, both 5-year-old 8 points. But that's a good example because I can guarantee for 3 years in a row, those bucks come to that wood lot in that same 2 week window. I mean, they're always there the first week of October. They leave before November. They're not there long, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. However, while in that wood lot, they navigate around via the wind and the air currents. I don't like to say wind because the wind impacts the thermal air currents very little. If you actually look at like isobars on a barometric pressure map and you like overlay that with your contour lines and you see how the air currents are moving through the contour lines, the wind really doesn't even impact it. So I hate to say wind, but I mean that in a generic sense. The bucks will use the wind to navigate around a woodlot. So if you have a scrape that's only good on a west wind, and he's there for 3 weeks and you never get a west wind, you'll never see him at that scrape. So one thing that's important is to document that and to make sure if you're hunting a target buck in a target woodlot that you have a scrape for each wind essentially. And most of my scrapes are multi-wind, like multifunctional. They'll work in a couple of winds. But the reason I say that is because my pair of, there'll be 5 this year, my pair of 8 pointers at the Uwharrie, they the scrape that I want to kill them at, they only hit one scrape and they only hit it on a west wind. And so if I don't get a west wind for those 3 weeks, I mean, I could go in there and hunt, but
But if
it's not as sure of a deal. It's not going to be that one sick kill, you know what I mean?
are you confident, if you do get that west wind on in that window, are you confident he's gonna hit it? Or
One of the two will, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
yeah.
they have for three
Uh,
years in a row. The problem is I haven't laid eyes on them yet this year.
yeah.
Excuse me, I dropped.
The reason I'm
I haven't
asking,
laid eyes on them yet, so I'm assuming they haven't been hit by a car or killed last year.
yeah,
Um, you know, there was 4 of them when they were 2, and
yeah.
then and then as 3 there was 3 of them, and then last year at 4 there was just the pair. I have videos of, I call them the tall 8 and the wide 8. They were a pair of spike horns that always come around. I grew them, and they I haven't seen them. So I had 4, had 3 last year. I had just the 2 8s. So this year I'm hoping that I just at least got one. You know, you know.
So
I know they bucks disappear. I mean, that's a real
yeah,
thing. People
well
eat them.
that like kind of brings up another question, right? So like I know you focus more closer to bedding area and you don't really hunt food per se, but like how do you combat like a food shift, right? So like you said earlier that you've got beans around, so like obviously you've got these deer, they're bedding in preferred bedding areas, they're hitting the beans every night or whatever. So do you find that maybe they're hitting a certain scrape coming out of certain bedding going to beans now, but like when the oaks drop and the beans go brown, are they going to go to a different bedding and hit a completely different scrape? Or like, are you going to lose them on one scrape and maybe pick them up on another scrape? Or are you still going to find them on the same scrape that you're getting them on in July?
So this all goes back to the larger data collection effort on my does. And for example, on the 7 piebald deer I was talking about, I had 18 and now I have 20 cameras on them. Just on that one doe group, 20 cameras. I have 20 Tasco SD cameras on them. And so what I will say is when I go into a piece of property, I'll break down the property and I'll figure out where the bedding areas are. For example, I'm doing it this year on a new piece. It's 2,300 acres. Um, of the whole 2,300 acres, I've drawn an X through everything. I have no interest in it except for one, maybe 150-acre pine thicket, and then another 25-acre pine thicket. Those are the two areas of interest. The rest of the property, I could care less about. So, now with that being said, I found deer in those thickets, and I'm trying to get some data on them now. If the food in that area is so unreliable and so unpredictable and so spread out, it makes it very, very hard to collect data. Like I know in the Adirondacks, doe groups would literally travel, they would swim rivers. I mean, you would have a doe group on one side of the river because of white acorns, and then they would swim to the other side of the river because of red acorns. And if you, and if you're in a scenario like that, it can be really, really tough. You have to have, for the way that I really like to hunt is I like to be able to track that doe group in their entire year-long travel pattern. I do things to help with that. I grow a lot of food plots, micro-sized food plots. I plant like on a gas line, like clover, and I do a lot of things to try to help keep those does in one spot. But for the most part, when it's public land, I make sure that I do my homework and I know where all the primary food sources are. And I know guys say primary food source for who? Always ask for who, because the primary food source for the bucks is not the primary food source for the does. It almost never is. Maybe in like June when they're all eating beans, okay, fine. But any other time of the year, they're not eating the same shit, right? So, I try to make sure I understand where all the food sources are for those does. For example, I get deer pictures every single day of my doe groups, every day, all day. If I'm not getting those deer pictures, why? Why? Where are they? Did they swim the river? Do you have cameras on the other side of the river? Why the hell are they on the other side of the river? What's over there? Is there corn? Someone's baiting? You got to know. You have to know, because if you start leaving too many things to variables, I mean, now you're just sitting in a tree stand trying to hope for a buck. I mean, so for me, if you have disappearing deer, then you have to know why. And that's why I like the Uwharrie, is because there's so much land with 50 some thousand acres that I can stay with my doe groups. And if I've posted some posts, if you've seen them or not, some of the followers maybe have, but I literally will have like an Onyx map, or not an Onyx, I see a Bill, I shouldn't say that, Spartan Forge map, sorry. I'll have like a Spartan Forge map, and I will literally have like a circle, or it won't be a circle, maybe a circle for like academic purposes, but it's more of like an oblong shape. But I will actually outline the territory of my doe groups, and it'll often be based on their travel will be based on food. Now here in the South, um, uh, on that topic, by doing that, I guess let me digress real fast. By outlining where my doe groups live and travel, they're territorial. And so by outlining them where they live and travel, if you can place a mock scrape so that multiple doe groups are using that mock scrape and they're using it as a community, that is an amazing mock scrape. A buck will give a scrape a more priority if it serves multiple doe groups. I just want to throw that out there, back to the interdigital scent thing. So yes, when you start looking at like one fawn is 70 pounds and almost has no spots, and then you have another fawn that's 30 pounds and has all of its spots, you might have two doe groups. Or if you have two mature does fighting in your scrape, you might have two doe groups. There's a lot of ways to figure that out. But and I go into all that in my channel. But for the most part, I'm trying to identify my doe groups on a map, where they live. This one over here, this one over here. I want to get a scrape that services them. Generally speaking, there's some food around. On that topic, what I will say is I have it a lot easier in the sense that here in the South, one, we have a lot more deer than other people. Like South Carolina, there's like 4 million deer per square mile. I don't know what the number is, but you could ride down the road right now and just count hundreds of them. Like there are just so many deer. So the number of deer impacts their territory as well as food. So like in the Pennsylvania mountains, you're going to have a doe that might have to go 3 ridges to the next oak tree for fresh acorns, and that could be a half a mile, where here my does would never travel a half a mile. And to her, that's nothing. That's just like, oh, I'm just going to go eat some acorns over there. That's just 3 ridges. But here, that would be like 100 miles. Like my does would never travel that far, because I live where the northern flora and the southern flora intersect. So we have like acorns, but like persimmons and like pecans. So we have like tropical and like northern hitting right where I live, and it creates such crazy diversity and jungle and thickness. And then you combine that with high deer numbers, or I guess that's the reason for the high deer numbers, because they get in that shit and you can't kill them. And then so you combine all of that, and my does really aren't traveling like that. And so to what you said, when I was in the Adirondacks, it was very hard because, like you said, like northern Maine, there'd be no real way to do it when your does are traveling a mile for, oh, there's an apple tree this way, there's white oaks that way, and then you have these long distances where does are traveling. That makes it really impossible. I mean, it would be hard to, yeah. Because then you're trying to distinguish one doe from another.
Right.
And one of the ways that I do that is based on its territory. Like, hey, that doe does not belong here, and if your deer are traveling those kinds of distances, you can't just look at a doe and be like, what the fuck are you doing here? You don't belong here. Like, so I can do that because my deer stay in one area. It's
Right.
like, I know the deer in my bean field. She's got a black leg, she's got a fucked up ear, you know what I mean? So when
Yeah.
you see one that doesn't belong there, you're like, holy shit, where'd she come from? And I'll see that with my deer. But when you're in a place like the Adirondacks where your deer are doing these long travels for apples and oaks, and they're swimming rivers and stuff for food, that makes it very difficult. But in those areas, you have a very finite, tight rut, and you can literally just hunt a
Yes.
good terrain feature,
Yeah.
spend enough days there, and unlike here, where if you just hunted a terrain feature, you would never kill a nice buck. I mean, you'd have to assume that your farm even has a nice buck, which would be a fool's assumption,
Yeah.
because it takes 10 farms to find a nice buck here. So it's like, yeah.
I want to paint you a personal picture because it kind of goes against some of the stuff you said tonight. So I want to
Yeah.
get your opinion and see how you would handle it, right? So new piece of
Love
public,
it.
new piece of public to me. No data, like never hunted it, never ran cameras. I found it last year while shed hunting. Very small piece. Uh, as small it is, you can red X over half of it right out, right? So like we're talking like maybe 5 acres is even worth hunting, right? It's an oak flat. There's bedding there, really good bedding, the ton of rut sign. There's not a lot of deer there right now, right? On the back side, it's all private ag. I'm assuming all those deer are down in that private ag right now. Who knows what's down there? So I went in, opened up the best scrape and the best location with a good kill tree for a good wind, uh, quite a few weeks ago. Put a camera on it. I'm getting some activity on it. There's a decent buck that's hit it. I don't know, say 5 times in the last couple weeks, or right. So like my thought is that spot's not really gonna even heat up until like the oaks start dropping, right? So I'm like kind of ahead of the curve. And the reason why I'm asking you is like based on some of the stuff you said tonight is like I should just abandon it because I'm not getting shit for activity now, right? But
During
on the
breeding
I'm
season. Sorry.
yeah, so I'm going on
Yes.
the premise that like September, October, those oaks are gonna, and there's white oaks up there too. As soon as those oaks start dropping, I'm hoping I'm ahead of the curve, and those deer are gonna come out of the ag up into the hill, move into that bedding where and move into where all that rut sign is. So stick with it and ride it out.
Well, so a couple things there. Without asking what state and how much pressure, just blanket statement for all the people hunting in North America. Um, so you nailed it on the head when you said breeding, because right, I don't give a shit about this is still summer.
Mm,
And so
right.
I care as much about your summer buck as I care about your night buck, right? So for right now, who gives a shit about him? Um, if that buck wants to make my Excel spreadsheet, then he will daylight after 9/1. If he daylights after 9/1, he makes the Excel spreadsheet. He no
Okay.
longer is in this day folder or this, nighttime summer buck folder over here that no one gives a shit about. He's now on an Excel spreadsheet if he daylights after 9/1. Or if he's very close to daylight, I will put my work in to get him in the daylight. Now, the problem with a 5-acre thicket is the sustainability of that thicket. I find it really hard to keep deer in a 5-acre thicket. 25 acres is really for me, I like to see 25 acres or more in a pine thicket because it just, yeah. I have a similar situation on my own private land that I own, and it's like 8 acres, and I just can't pin deer down in there. They'll come, I just can't pin them in there. It doesn't seem like it's enough real estate. So I would say that your thicket is probably going to turn up when the acorns hit. I mean, guys historically like to hunt acorns because the acorns bring the does, and the does bring the tail, and the tail brings the buck rubs, and everybody loves buck rubs. That's where I'm gonna hunt, right? So they think acorn flat, I'm gonna have some rubs, I'm gonna kill a buck, and you will if you're in a state like, let's say PA or Ohio or a good deer hunting state, you will kill a buck. But to get that deer to like daylight there every day, that's a good point. So now you're asking, would I kill that scrape? Let's say I go build that scrape right now. I am not going to kill that scrape unless I'm getting the majority of deer pictures at night. If I am getting the majority, like 80%, if I'm not getting 80% daytime pictures, I'm killing the scrape. Yeah, I don't care about the buck. I'm killing the scrape because it's not reliable enough for me. You're putting a lot on the line to try to hunt that 5-acre thicket, and you're like, well, I don't want to kill the scrape. He's coming around. But
Ah,
what I have to say is I get 7 buck tags in like 15 to 20 days to hunt. I can't do that on that 5-acre thicket. It's not reliable enough. You know what I mean? Like, while you can get it done there, and I have a method for that, I would tell guys they really need to go in there and collect their data. You need to know when your fawns are dropping, when that breeding activity is happening. You need to be intimate with your oak trees. You need to actually go in and probably cut a lot of oak trees to create more mass. You maybe need to blend some other things in, like some brush and shrubs and edible shrubs and hinge cuts and things like that to create better. You could probably do all better there. You said it was public, so you can't really do all that. There's things you could do on a small parcel, but the number one thing you can do on a small parcel is just hunt it at the right time.
right.
So if that happens to be a Halloween thicket, hunted on Halloween, if you go in there on 11/10, all your does will be pregnant. You're not going to see any bucks. So what I would say year one is leave your camera out all the way around the year and try to catch those little wobbly legged fawns, and then also try to find out when those big bucks are passing your camera, and they will likely line up. I tell guys all the time, like, look at your fawns. You got a wobbly leg fawn, and then let's say, he was born around um, uh, in May, you get a little wobbly legged fawn, a couple of weeks old, and then all of a sudden, oh, boom, 10/15, I'm getting my big buck pictures. Well, if you do the math and okay, well, you had your fawn born right in line with those 10/15 buck pictures. He was there partying. So that's when you need to hunt there. Don't go hunt on 11/15. You won't see
Right.
nothing. So that's not when you got your buck pictures. And that's not when you had your wobbly legged fawn. So little tiny parcels, you have to hunt them only in that little tiny window. Kind of like that week window you get in the Adirondacks. You might only have a 2, 3, 4 day window on that little piece. But for right now, what I would say is if I'm getting nighttime pictures of deer, it's not a reliable enough. It's not primary bedding. That's the key. Guys talk about bedding, but primary bedding is different than bedding. You got all different kinds of bedding, and there's not nomenclature invented yet for that. I went to public school. It's not up to me to create all these different terms. I have like my 70 rule and things that I come up with to keep track of this stuff, but all the different types of bedding, there's no words to describe different types of beddings really yet. Like, people don't have the terms, but I'll throw one out there. Like, I call it primary bedding. And the piece that you're talking about is not primary bedding because you would only get daytime pictures. And my experience has been primary bedding has to be 25 acres. I mean, if it's a deer herd of 7 or more deer, they don't want to just be in one little 5/8. They like to move around
Yeah.
in there. And there's got to be greenbrier and broadleaf below the belt buckle and things like that. So, but I think that You know, it's bedding, but it's not primary bedding. So, you know, I'm looking for primary bedding areas only, and I'm looking for those 9 one-day walkers to make the spreadsheet. And then I'm looking for those deer to repeat that behavior more than 1 year in a row. Um, so I'm not really hunting a buck the first time I find him unless he's really old and he's being really stupid. Not really doing that. I'm just collecting the data. And then next year, let's say he shows up again. He was 3. He comes back same time, Halloween, does the same thing. He's 4. Then that third year, like my pair of 8-pointers, I'm going to hunt this year. They're 5. They're ready. I'll be there. I don't know if they're alive, but if they are alive, they will come. They have come for 5 years in a row, 4 years in a row. Around that same time, they're going to be there, and that's when I'll hunt. But that's primary bedding, and back to like the quality of your historical data, the not using scent and stuff like that. Well, that goes into it. I mean, you need your historical data to be coming from primary bedding only, because deer at night, they do like we do. We like to get on our 4-wheeler and go explore, hop on the dirt bike and just take off, or maybe we get in the car with our wives. We like to ride around, look at Christmas lights and stuff. Deer do the same thing. They explore at night, and it's very, very dirty data. You just can't go by it. So there has to be primary bedding. I'll come up with the term right here. I'll create it. Primary bedding, and it has to be only daytime deer pictures. Period. Or I'm not messing with it. I got too many tags and too few days to hunt. So I'm looking for buck. If I want to really kill bucks, like in 1 or 2, 3 sits. And let's say you have 100 cameras and limited days and lots of tags. What are you going to do with those cameras and those tags? Well, I'm only going to focus on day walkers that day walk repeatedly on the same dates year over, because that allows me to fill tags with some efficiency, right? Like I can go out, hunt 12 times, kill 5 deer, and not take 40 sits to fill a tag, but that's tough to line up 12 day walkers that have day walked 2 years in a row or more going into your season. That is going to require 400 boot miles and 100 cameras. It does. If you figure out an easier way, please share with me, because that's what I do. So, so it's I literally had just picked up another buck, last year, who's like I shared the picture with somebody yesterday, but he's like a 170, 180 10-pointer. Picked him up at 2 a.m. and it really does hurt my heart to take that picture, put him in that summer night buck folder.
Right.
Fuck you,
So I think this is something.
It hurts right inside, but I get too many tags and not enough days. I have to.
So this is such a good topic, because this is something that I've struggled with.
You can't fuck around if you get a lot of tags. You got
to forever, right? Because different, like, there's like this big shift, like you hit the nail on the head, like primary bedding. Well, that primary bedding here, anyways,
new term
will change, but it will change depending on the time of the year and the food sources and all that stuff, right? So, like, I have cameras out now where I'm not getting a ton of activity yet, but I'm banking on the fact that food source is going to change, therefore the primary bedding is going to change, and like when that happens, that bedding is going to fill up and that new food source is going to be active. But I might not be getting the data now. I can move that camera to the other side of the hill and I could get all the pictures in the world now, but it's not going to do me any good come September. You know what I mean? So it's like I struggle with, like, where do I want to be with cameras now?
May I ask where you're hunting?
State-wise?
I don't know where you boys are from.
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, yeah. So, just typically speaking, like if we're talking public, like 9 times out of 10, all your ag is private, right? Unless you're door knocking, you're not hunting the ag. So
Right.
so you're either stuck in the swamps, or you're stuck up on the hills, which is hardwoods, right? So like so there was a little confusion with like the scenario I painted for you. It wasn't 5 acres of bedding. The bedding's actually just over the line on the private, but I have like an oak flat that's all tore up, right? So like I said, I can put a camera on that oak flat now with a scrape, and every once in a while, like, and he's not even a big buck, he'll come through, like you said, he's checking out the Christmas lights. I'll catch a picture of him, right? nothing. I'm not close to killing this deer. Not even in the ball game, right? But come September, October, he's probably going to be daylighting there when the oaks are dropping. You know what I mean? So like, I guess the point is, it's like I can get pictures over there, but they're going to be useless come the season, or I can have cameras here that will be dead now, but will heat up when the time is right. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's where I struggle with, is like now.
And that's where my saying comes from. If you're hunting hot sign, you're a day behind.
Right.
You're a day behind.
Yeah.
So what I recommend in my method would be to I have cameras like this week I hung some 2026 and 2027 cameras. I know that sounds funny. All of my 2025 cameras are hung. I have 65 cameras right now hung for 2025. They have nothing to do with this year. They are for next year. I am gathering breeding activity data from this year for 2025. I have like 15 cameras now out for 2026, and I hung 2 on a new piece for 2027. I have no intentions on hunting there. I'm just gathering those dates, and I'm going to move those cameras around, and I'm going to get those daylight locations. For me, I'm not hunting over that data, over the here and now. I'm looking at that across time. And regardless of what you're seeing on your cameras, if your piece of paper, if your calendar says, hey, we historically see, these big bucks on these dates, that's when I'm going to hunt there. But I'm only hunting those daylight bedding areas, those primary bedding areas. So I'm never hunting that oak flat. I'm just going to be honest. So another thing that I do, and maybe it's because I live in a super pressure area like here where they run dogs and stuff, but my mature bucks, they like to have maybe in May and June when they're out at beans. But after that, they like to just have shit scraping down their sides all the time. Briars, twigs. They don't like to be exposed. So for me, like if I could take off like my work boot and I can throw it, and if I could find my work boot within, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, I'm not hunting there. It's not thick enough for me. So back to the oak flat, like I'm probably not hunting food because food's going to be a nighttime destination, and that's just counterproductive to where I'm trying to kill a deer. I'm trying to kill them in their daylight spot. So I would probably be door knocking to get into that bedding area because that buck that you see coming through, checking things out, he's on his feet browsing at 11 in the morning and at 3 in the afternoon. He's walking around. I mean, I get bucks all day, every day. So he's out there. It's just if he's not your buck, you have like my 180-inch, 170-inch 10-pointer, 2:30 in the morning. It hurts me to put him in that folder. It hurts to take that picture and just be like, you're going in the night summer buck folder. But he's a night buck and he's a summer buck. So my advice would be next. Find 5 different ones. Get over him because that's a tough. Now with that being said, that's because I live here. But if I lived in a place like my buddy who's in Long Island, he's got like these 3-year-olds running around. They're all poking young. If I lived in a place like that, hell, I would.
Easy. Don't tell everybody.
I would probably like, Kansas or something, one of them areas, New York City. I'd probably, I'd just get out the base of a beaver dam and sit 10 days, especially if you only get one tag. So what I was going to say though, is there is a direct proportion to how finite your rut is, and also like with tracking your does. So for example, you were saying that my does travel further and further for food. Well, in those areas where your does are traveling further and further for food, you tend to have a more finite window for the rut. You have a more intense winter. Your fawning happens in a tighter window out of survival means. So basically, the further north you get, the does have to go further and further for food, but you also have a smaller and smaller and smaller rut window. So while you go further and further north, by the time you get to maybe Connecticut and Maine and New York, it's really freaking hard because your does are swimming rivers, but you also know that your rut happens in November. So you're like, all right, well, I kind of know when the breeding's happening. And then the further south you get, your rut kind of just fizzles out. You're like, well, they just kind of they breed all the time. So, but with that being said, your doe, it's so herbaceous here. Your does don't travel. There's so many deer. They set in, and so your deer won't travel for food. But you don't get a rut. You don't really get a rut to hunt. And then as you go further north, your does start to travel for food, and the whole historical thing starts to get harder and harder. But you start to get a rut to hunt. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like there's a balance there. You
Yeah.
can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have a finite rut and then also finite does in an area. It's just that's not how it works. So yeah, so it's kind of give take. I would say like
Yeah.
you either get the rut or you get your does in one area. If you get like in Pennsylvania where they have a winter, your deer are friggin' all over the place, and you really just have to focus on good hunting practices. Guys like
Yeah.
Moose and those guys are always talking about terrain features and thermals and clear cuts, and you want to listen to those guys in that scenario, not me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
But
we've had moose on.
At
yeah,
all.
that's why I said it because I literally
Yeah.
watched it before this to try to get a feel for you guys, and
Yeah.
I liked him, and I listened
Yeah.
to all of his shows. There's only a handful of guys I really
Yeah.
listen to all their shows. He's one of them. So,
Yeah.
and I said that with the PA thing because those guys will put you on big deer if you're hunting in areas where maybe your does do travel 2 miles for food. Real
See,
hard to hunt the way I hunt in those
yeah.
areas.
See, I've never really put much thought into it, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about it, and I feel like in my experience, where we are, bedding and food's pretty much everywhere. I mean, there's oak trees every you go in the woods, you can see an oak tree. They're literally everywhere, and the deer can bed. Like there's bedding. It's not like that's a bedding area right there, and that's
Mhm.
food right there. There's food and bedding everywhere, but we do have a pretty tight window for like the peak breeding and stuff like that too. So it's
Well,
an
the other,
interesting
yeah, yeah.
it's an interesting thought because I've never put that much thought into, the difference between like a broad rut to a tight rut or more or less traveling and like everything in between. Like you might have this and you might have that. You might not have this. You might have that. And like I never really thought about how it actually is in my backyard. And I would say it's a lot of food everywhere, a lot of bedding everywhere, but tight windowed rut.
And it's not cut and dry because it's going to change when you get into pockets of areas. So, for example, let's say you go up to the north, and maybe it's very very remote, and the deer are traveling all over the place, and they got a really tight rut window and stuff like that. But let's say you go to maybe Buffalo, the city of Buffalo. Urban deer are a whole different animal. They live like southern deer. When you get into these metropolated areas, what deer do is their territories start to shrink. They don't start traveling all over for food. They get into like grandma's rose bush and they stay there. And then so you end up with these urban deer, and they end up like bifurcating, and you end up having a lot of different estrus states in these urban areas. And so even in northern spots, if you are hunting urban deer, you could benefit a lot from my page because you're going to want to hunt those areas of that city when they're hot. And it is going to change. It's not going to be just like all one mountainside. It'll vary in that city a lot. And so if you're urban hunting, it resembles southern hunting a lot.
Super
um,
super interesting.
yeah, because your deer aren't traveling like that. But what I would say is you need to hunt daytime deer. If you're not hunting daytime deer, you really aren't being as efficient as you can, no matter where you live. No matter where you live, these bucks are on their feet, they're walking around during the day. And the thing is like if you only like to hunt the rut, then just turn this off because I hate the rut. You're not going to learn how to hunt the rut from me. I hate the rut. My bucks start running all over the place. They start to become unpredictable. They start to just disappear and show up, and like 2 bucks here, none over there. And it's like Jesus Christ, like what are these deer doing? And so I hate the rut. I hate the rut. I hunt specific bucks in specific spots at specific times. So I hate the rut. I hate it. It's just a variable that I hate. That's why I kill mostly in September and October. So what I would say is if you're hunting the rut and you're hoping that deer are going to come to you, cool, get on that oak flat, build your scrape. Maybe during the rut, he'll get excited and he'll step out 10 minutes early. That's all you need. But if down here, if you're trying to get it done in the early season, you're not trying to bring deer to you. And it's like, if you say that out loud, it sounds like common sense. But if you're trying to kill a deer with your bow pre-rut, you are not hoping. I hope you're not hoping that deer's coming to you. Like, I'm gonna sit here. I get him at 9 o'clock at night every night, but I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna hope that today he shows up at 5.
Opening day.
If you're trying to if you're trying to dream up a buck, it's gonna be a tough season. Like, so what I would say is during the rut, you get on that oak flat, you get close, he'll come, you build a scrape, whatever, fine, that'll work. But pre-rut bow season, like I hunt on specific deer, they're not coming to you. They're not. They're in their little, their little area, and that's where they do ag, they go to bed, whatever. And you have to go inside his bubble and kill him. He's not coming to your bubble until the rut. So
right.
So that's what I mean when I say I'm only hunting daytime deer, day walking mature bucks, because I'm trying to get it done early, and I have to go into his bubble to do it. He's not coming to my bubble.
Right.
When he starts to do that, I just start shooting does because I hate the rut. I call it Dovember. I paint the wood reds. I killed 7 last year. Yeah, I hate November. I call it Dovember, and I fill freezers because I'm like, I got 2. I doubled with the trad bow last year, and I doubled with the rifle. I'm just like, yeah, knock them down. I hate November.
That's awesome.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, Brandon, this has been an absolute blast. I got one last question for you, and we want to know what drives you outdoors.
It's my therapy. I mean, I know that sounds cliche and funny, but life gets to you, right? Like it's tough. I don't know what you guys do for a living. I own my own company. It's a small failure, right? Like, it's just a hobby company. It's not like anything big, but it does keep me a little busy. In addition to that, I run a utility during the day, and I manage that, and that does actually take quite the chunk out of my soul. And then, of course, you guys have channels, so you understand, like, posting, keeping up with comments and stuff like that is tiresome too. And so, hunting for me has always been therapy. Hunting and fishing. I say and fishing because I'm a fisherman that turned into a deer hunter first. So,
We know
hunting
that.
and fishing is therapy to me. I love it. I'm actually going up north for business. I'm going to try to go out fishing with my buddy Squatch, and I told him. He's like, oh, I hope we catch something or whatever. And I told him, dude, no, I don't care if we catch a thing. I just want to get some mosquito bites and some dope ass eggs and bacon somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about catching anything. I just want to be out there, Like, I just want to, yeah. So stick a hook in my finger, get a couple mosquito bites, and then leave and get breakfast. Like, it's fun to catch fish, but I think for me, it's therapy. I'm obsessed with deer. I'm obsessed with hunting, and yeah, it's chasing the unknown. For me, it's addiction. It is. I will lie if it's not. And it's chasing the unknown. I got those 7 piebalds. I have a black coyote. I get these day walking mature bucks. I got another deer that's like got black all over her face. It's like chasing the unknown, man. It's like you don't know what you're gonna find on camera. Um, I had a white bobcat one time. Like, it's awesome, man. I love it.
Well,
Do you call her blackface?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get canceled,
You should
so
cancel her.
Actually, I'm hoping she gives me a nice black-faced buck. How badass would that be?
That'd be super cool.
I've got about every other kind of looking buck out there, man. We got a bunch of weird ones. I got a deer missing an ear too. I'll have to send you a picture of that one.
That's pretty cool. A deer with no ear.
Yeah, I don't know if someone shot it off or if like a bobcat chewed it off or.
You know what you call a deer with no ear?
What?
I have no idea.
I'm a dad, so I love dad jokes.
Just make that up.
Kinda. I think I heard it before, but
it's been fun, man, and I would love to actually maybe if I can put down a big slob this year in October, you guys will have me back on and we can talk about how I compile some of my data.
Well, not to jinx it, but typically there's some pretty good luck that comes from guests after they leave.
We call it the luck of the podcast.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. I'm gonna knock a shit ton of deer down either way. Even if I don't kill a big one, I'll shoot 10 does if I have to. So
The only way to
the
learn how to
freezers will get filled. They always do.
Shoot
The
them
only way-
200s.
Yep, 200.
Yeah, I'll there's two things I'm going to guarantee you. I'll have more venison than my freezers can carry. I'll have to give it away, and I will not kill a 200. Those are my two guarantees this year.
I guess
because I ain't done it in 40 years. I ain't going to start now.
I guess it's a best place to leave it. Thanks for joining us, Brandon. Been awesome. Been great. Can't wait to have you back on. We can chat it all up after
Love
kill
you
a
guys. You guys are
200
hilarious.
Carolinas. And for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor.